then the Shabbat Yanda Bonzo Vesanya Riva Nasha. The Reshavan Jidin Jamba Jubon, the Lana Mevan Hadam Yetem Basani. Benjawa Shanya Tobana Satin, the Mahajum then the Shabbat Rajamaya. Zobe Sanya Riva Nasha from them, the Reship. Jidin Jamba Jubon, the Rapalo Juana. Hadam Menonje, the Sanje Jumden, the Shaja Tubala Sasa Lonja, the Yamus. The Mahajum then the Shabbat Rajamaya. Zobe Sanya Riva Shaton, the Reship. Jidin Jamba Jubon, the Rapalo Juana. Hadam Menonje, the Sanje Jumden. Bejawa Shaja Tubala Sasa Lonja, the Yamus. The Mahajum then the Shabbat Rajamaya. Rivada Shadun Demba Devaresha Vanjiden Jamba Jim. Kalo Juva Lana Meval Hadam Menonje Demba Sanje Jumden. Bejawa Shaja Tuba La Shase Lonja do Jambu. Kanze Kanye Zova Jetam Zaya Sajan Den. Manenjiden Den Anshoja Zon Teze Kava Jama. Namda Gunga Chodo Susawa Yeshe Jazo Sijan. Tabanjiden Sunala Meval Gombo Chunye Jama. Senja Demba Chimenda Vision, Sando Rava, the regular Seva Suma Janyame Chenja Jama. Bombo to Jesha Bottom Jembe Demba, Sonoma. The Jesha Macha, the Lotabe, the Jacha, giving it on the Chido Denam Shojo was in your Jama, Genetic Lavatama, the Nation Gatama, and then get your money. The Wajaya measure Jenga weapons on some Rangi Simi. Tenesanje Dembanya Karma Rima, Yamasa, Sugar, Melono Jenda on the Shushan, the Derata, Sonam the Cobandon Jinja, Dadu, the Gadana, Shiva Latu, Sivir Solen, the one driver show.
To the teacher, the blessed one, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being. Perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Surata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer whom the shelter of man, I prostrate and make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shelter of heaven, I prostrate and make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shelter, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Men of supreme among humans who are one on this earth, you paced out 7 strides that said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then I prostrate. With pure bodies formed serenely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, women of the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like vast ocean. To you, the one come to dustness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality. To that Dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realization. who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community attending virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain rank of all seeing, subdue the foe faults, and be delivered from the ocean of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death.
Sanje Shalom, Zoje Shalom, Loan, Chandra Pando, Bande, Dagen Jeso Jebe, Sonam Je, Dola Benje, Sanje Shalom, Zoje Shalom, Loan, Chandra Pando, Dagen Jeso Jebe, Sonam Je, Dola Benje, Sanje Shalom, Zoje Shalom, Loan, Chandra Pando, Dagen Jeso Jebe, Sonam Je, Dola Benje, Sanje Shalom, Zoje Shalom, Loan, Chandra Pando, Dagen Jeso Jebe, Sonam Je, Dola Benje, Sanje
I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I created by practicing giving the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I created by practicing giving the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I created by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Tādāṃ mēnā jētā mā sāñcē chūmdēn dēyā sōgōn dīshēn shēmbā tēndā sōgōn tāpē jētā. Gēpē sāvā nāma chūmē sāvā sēpē rāntō jēmbā sōnāṃ jētē rāntāṃ jēshē yā pēchē sāmbā. Chānāṃ jēmē tō jēmbā chūyō rēmbā tōmbā tōnāṃ mītēmbā mēbā tēpē mēbā nāmā nōmbā rāgā. Shērabā sīkē mēnēbā tōnāṃ zēmbā mēbā sēmjē tāṃ jē tēmbā chāchū sēmbā nāmā jēb. Pāpē kāsā nā jē jēbā nyāngā nā jēbā chōngchē tā chōbā nā jē tēpē yīshē pā tō mēbā pōbā sāñcē mēbā. Sonamrata yani bakujeta me chomi che bakutsumba me bande bata soda genya mama go sume bata ta mo de na bata kamda ta be geje namanda mandi bana shinde je bayo do do ta na na tu se bale chu na ke ba je yo deva namajo manda ta da je be sanje jumden de je na ne ya ba nya na de ma ya da ba ni je da na de ba zu je tam je la zu be sa la shu ba te an de da kuchi venyo le yang da ba nama zuwa ta le shen da tama ke ba pa do ke ba tama ke ba te ka sin ro sa ma je ba yang zo ba yang zo ta ba yang zo chang yang da ba to ba ne me ba te she ba me ba ba te ba te to ba de yo ke ba na je so zo ra ge je ba che ba chen den de je da ba su me che do ba la le ba to ba je ba che ba so be cha tu me de ba me je de ba da de ba te ba yo ba je ba che ba wa te ba che de da le ba che ba ri ba che 정말 주거든 뭐주고 때문에 저거서 자저거서 저거 손은 대표지 예서 중앙체 집에서 주고 군동원 집에서 주고 뭐 관계에 뭐 대전은 오면 번지 20년면서 빼면다 차지 So page 357 demonstrating through the other arguments how the reflexive awareness remain untenable. So before the mindfulness school says the reflexive awareness can be established through recollections, right? So memories, and how because the memory always, so there's the recollection of
recollection of the object is due to the perception of the object, and the recollection of the subject is due to the experiencing the subjective experience, experiencer of the experience. So that's what they say, right? Now, and then the the Prasangika school says, to remember the subjective experience is not necessarily through the experiencer of the experience, because recollection of the object and the subject both can be done through simply by remembering the object, right? And then additional, the Shantideva's, how is it? He is kind of the Shantideva's, from the Shantideva's point of view, or Shantideva's reason is, to remember something is not necessary. You have earlier perceived that object exactly. Remembering something is not necessarily you have perceived that thing in the past time or the prior time. And certainly, Shantideva says you can say, so you can remember by recollecting that you got bitten by so remembering that you got bit by something, and later on you can say, oh, when I was bitten, I must have poisoned. So that recollection is the being poisoned is not perceived prior time, but we still say this is the memory. I remember that now, right? So having having eat something in the restaurants, and then later on you say, oh, I got food poisons. So that's the kind of Shantideva's idea. So it's all saying that there's no any evidence to prove there's the reflexive awareness. So now this demonstrating the other argument, how the reflexive awareness remain untenable. Now this was saying that so this is as follows, that therefore the since no reflexive awareness exists, what is it that cognize your dependent natures? I think again he says dependent nature. So now saying that we have disapproved that is the concept of the reflexive awareness. If the reflexive awareness is not there, and what condition or what base you can assert there is the other power natures which is truly exist. If there is no reflexive awareness, whole idea of the consciousness being truly exists is proven by reflexive awareness. When you disapprove that reflexive awareness, and then you have no reason to claim consciousness is truly exist. Since the agent, object, and actions cannot be identical, so the agent, object, actions cannot be identical. So now saying that, when we say, I see things, so then there is the object to see, and there's the act of seeing, and there's the agent who sees. Three things, right? So then we can, come about talking, this is the subject and object. So if the identical, like the I consciousness, so I consciousness by itself perceiving the I consciousness, then it is untenable. I can see the color to see, and the I consciousness, which is seeing the color, and the seer I am is always, dualistic, dualistic form or dualistic perspective, So I consciousness and I consciousness itself, there is no two things. I consciousness cannot see itself. Ear consciousness cannot perceive itself. So then saying that since the agent and object in action cannot be identical, they are separate. The claim that cognition apprehends itself is untenable. When there is no subject and object as a two separate phenomena, and you cannot say, I consciousness, which is apprehended by the nature of the I consciousness itself. So this is the demonstrating through the argument, other arguments. This is another one argument. Therefore, as stated before, since no reflexive awareness exists, what is it that cognize your and Chitamathas, the mind-only school, other power natures, since the three, the agent that cuts the tree that is object of act, and the actions of cutting cannot be identical because they are separate, right? When say the trees that cut by hand, so there is the tree, which is the object of act, what you have done. That tree has, they're in the pieces and then the how you cut and the width you cut by hand, so the hand is the actions, and then who cut it and use. There's so three things, they are not identical. So when you say the I consciousness is perceived by the very nature of the I consciousness, so then there is no two subject and object. There's no two. It's just one I consciousness. So I consciousness is not going to perceive itself. So the three, it is untenable. How this objection applies can be understood from Jnanagarba's auto commentary on the true truth. With respect to the cognition itself, neither Adam nor non-dual cognitions appears as things, and convention do not apply to anything that cannot be appears. So in the mind-only school, so mind-only school says there is no external object, there is no external form to see, there is no external sound to hear. So it is non-dualistic. The subject is seeing its own imprints. So let me see in the Leben ishin yingbo, Jana Garba, Dutar of the Nibu Meba, Mobu, Mo Minangus, Mobu Nibu Meba, Mo Minawa, Tanya Meadow, she said this. Dutar of Nibu Meba. So with respect to the cognition itself, neither Adam nor non-dual cognitions appears as things. So this was in the Gyanagava's the order commentary. So this thing that we kind of, it is almost, how to say this? So Gyanagava here is saying that according to Minority School, eye consciousness is seeing things that is inseparable from the eye consciousness. So there is no any sense to prove that eye consciousness seeing something that is inseparable from it. You can make sense when it's a dream. You can say, right, the dream consciousness is the imprint that reflects in your mind that you are seeing. So in the daytime, when you open the eye, you see things. So whatever you're seeing is inseparable from the eye consciousness. It doesn't make sense. It's not the same as the dreaming. In the awakened time, when you see things, the colors keep changing, and you can also, decide what to see, what not to see. The dream consciousness is there is no control. Whatever the reflection in your mind, you're seeing it. So eye consciousness seeing things that is inseparable from the eye consciousness, and because of the, and you have, Minority School says there is no external particles of the atoms. So if things do exist externally, then it has to be produced or built from the collection of the atoms. So the atoms do not exist, therefore, whatever the eye conscious seeing is inseparable from the eye consciousness. So in the ordinary language, people always say, what I see is there, it's out there. So it is totally, illogical, irrational, because when the people use the language, I'm seeing it, I'm pointing outside. So there is no eye consciousness seeing things that, inseparable from the eye consciousness. The conventions you apply to anything that cannot be appears. So in the critiquing, right? That the notion of pure subjective experience and inward directed awareness, devoid of dualistic perceptions, which is presented in the manner they explained above, as both as the known as well as the knower. The Janagrava raised the following objections. So it kind of, which means that it's saying that, eye consciousness see things that is part of eye consciousness. Air consciousness, hearing the sound, is a part of the air consciousness. So it's Janagrava says it doesn't make sense. When you say I want to listen to this sound, this music, and then you listen to music and say, I don't like this, I want another one. You can have someone to play the guitar for you. So how can you say the air consciousness, the listening sound that is inseparable from air consciousness? So the sound is conditioning in the air consciousness. The color is changing its aspect, casting different aspect of image to the sense power. So the Jnanagrapha says this is not really making sense. So if one presents the knower and the distinctions from the something that is, so knower and known. So knower and known is always subject and object. It is always in a distinct manner. So no matter how much one applies their mind, no appearance of the distinctions of the knower and known can be conceived. So if, for example, eye consciousness and the subjective experience of eye consciousness, there is no two things, knower and known. Eye consciousness and the color, you can say there's a knower and known. So what has known is the color. The knower who knows that color is the eye consciousness. So eye consciousness just by itself, there is no true subject and object. So the absurd consequences follows, including that agent and object of act and the act itself all collapse into one. So the manner the Jnanagrapha, Master Jnanagrapha's regard the Chitramatha's reflexive awareness as having exactly the same status as the Charvaka school's notion of the individual atom insofar as its existence and non-existing is concerned. So I think this translation is not fully translated in this. In the Sothantika school and Minor school, Sothantika school is very strange because Sothantika school says, yes, there's a reflexive awareness, but still there's the external object. And the external object is through something that is formed through the collection of the atoms. And each of the atoms is also the collection of their particles. And finally, there's most partless particles. So the Minor school also says, if there is external, it has to be like what the Sothantika school is presenting. Sothantika school thinks the external object are through the collection of the partless particle. So the Minor schools, if there is external form, then there must be partless particle. But Minor school says the partless particles is impossible. If the partless particles is directionless particle. So directionless particles, how many of those collected? Still no directions. No direction, no form. The Sothantika schools, yes, the directionless, but 2 or 3 or 6, and it become atoms. And then their collection of 6 or 7 is again like molecules, and it can be turned into form. So Sothantika school and Minor school, the idea of the external object is, is a collection of the partless particles or directionless particles. So exactly the same in the Charvaka schools. Charvaka school means that includes Vibhashika school and Sothantika school. So notion of individual atoms and insofar in existent non-existence is concerned. Even for the purported individual atoms, so long as it's material, it will have to occupy the spatial locus. So if there is partless particles, because it is the particle, therefore it should occupy its own location. It must be occupied some space, which means it can prevent another particle to overlap. This is what they, So there were also, and his idea of the particles is still classic particles, the particles which can occupy its own space. Occupied, spatial locus. And when its form appears to the mind, there is no other way for it to be perceived than the composed of the parts. So composed of the parts means when it comes to the eye consciousness, so when it appears to eye consciousness, it is already a form which has many directions. So there is no partless particles that appears to eye consciousness, right? So therefore, minority school says, if there is the external form, it has to be formed through the collection of partless particle. Partless particle does not exist. Sodanic school says external form, which is formed through the collection of partless particles. Although the partless particle has no directions, it has no what's called. It cannot occupy any spatial, but and the 7 of them collected, then it can become the classic form. So anyway, anything that appears to eye consciousness, it has to be, with directions. So therefore, these two concepts of the two schools, a non-dual knower and known, and the indivisible atom, remain mere philosophical postulations. So the Chandrakirti is saying this is total exaggerations. The minority school says because there is no partless particle, therefore no external, is philosophically exaggerated. And Siddhantika school, external form is collection from the partless particles. The partless particle exist. That is also the exaggeration. The philosophical postulations, Jnanagarbha even reject the idea that these two things appears to the mind, but are not as ascertained, appears to the mind, but are not ascertained. For in his audio commentary on the two truths, he writes, so he rejects, so there's some kind of saying in the mind-only school, the Siddhantika school, so the partless particles, which has formed the physical form, the color or the shape. So Chandrakirti says there is total exaggerations. And then if you insist that, Yes, this may be not ascertained, but it is not untenable. It can be possible. So that Janagrava says that too is exaggeration. There is no such thing. Yeah, any questions? I think, yeah. So he said, if you assert that while they do appear to the mind, they cannot be ascertained, then what exactly are they? They can be, there can be no terms for such things, since we cannot rely on your statement that it does appears. You are asking us to simply take your word for it. So thus Jnanagrava say that only the proof of the opponent has for his claim that it does appears to the mind is his swearing to it to be so. Yeah, I swear. Or you can say it's God will. Also, through the reasoning found in the descent into the Lanka Sutras, the reflexive awareness becomes untenable. Now, this is the main reasons. Just as the blade of the sword, right, does not cut itself, and just as the tip of the nail does not touch itself, the self-cognition of the mind is the same. So every cognition, has no ability to perceive itself. It cannot be object of itself. Right? Eye consciousness cannot be object of eye consciousness. Ear consciousness cannot be object of ear consciousness. So subject and object means distinct two separate phenomena. Like the blade of the sword, it cannot cut itself. Tip of the nail does not touch itself. The eye consciousness is not going to perceive itself. So the reflexive awareness is the part of the eye consciousness. Now, this is the main reason is just as the blade of the sword does not cut itself. Yeah, any questions?
Thinking through it.
Huh?
Thinking through.
Now, the point is, the Prasangika Chandrakirti is saying that, every possible of your reasoning to constitute there is the reflexive awareness, we have refuted. So then you don't have any reason to claim there's a reflexive awareness. And then says, when there is no reflexive awareness, and what base you can say the other power natures as truly exist. That's the kind of the main Chandrakirti saying that. And again, Chandrakirti says, the point is your thinking of the reflexive awareness is saying the subject become, as a subject, the I consciousness is become the object of itself. So that is your idea of the reflexive awareness. So when you remember the color that you have seen, earlier, you have seen, when you remember that, and you also remember the, subjective experience. So because of that, you're remembering with object subjective experience, and you are saying that's remembering the subjective experience is already perceived in the prior time. And who perceived it? I conscious seeing the blue color. Who sees that? Who perceived that? And then minority school says, this cannot be done by different consciousness, which means now only possible left is I consciousness itself. The way I consciousness seeing the blue is, knowing the I consciousness. So, Chandika, this is, so, knower and known are always distinct, two separate phenomena. So how can you separate the I consciousness, the half of I consciousness perceiving I consciousness, half of the I consciousness perceive the blue?
This kind of goes into the thing you said about how there's only one thought at a time, one perception at a time. I'm trying to remember which class that was.
Yeah. That number about the unity means in the sentient beings, one who is not enlightened, and then every consciousness perceived, one object.
One object.
So there is no, if you are sentient beings, you cannot have one subjective experience perceive everything. Right.
And so they're saying that the idea would be that there would almost have to be two objects at once, which is the self-perceiving and then the conventional object that is being.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So the minority school, because when you remember both. That's what they said. So when you see the blue and afterwards you remember the blue, and you also remember, I have seen it. So this is the minority school kind of, what's it? That's the kind of reality. And based on that reality, so the blue you remember, you have already perceived in the prior time. And then how about the subjective experience? I have seen it. Then how can you remember that? And if there is no prior time, you have perceived the subject. And how can you remember the subjective experience? So Chandrakirtis and Shantideva were saying that, subjective experience is a remember byproduct of remembering the object. The taste of the food, the remembering, and you also remember, eating that food. So you don't need an external perception to perceiving the subjective experience. So therefore, no reflexive awareness is possible. So when there is no reflexive awareness, then the minority school, the only options, they have to follow the middle school. You have no any reason to hold on the other power natures is truly exists, because the very reason their reflexive awareness is untenable. So then after that, the stating that intrinsically existing dependent nature is akin to the son of, the barren woman. So now, because they're saying that you have only one reason that you can think that other power natures are truly exist. So that is disproved, defeated, deflated, debunked, or something like that. So then you have no reason to hold on the consciousness as truly exists. If you keep insisting that other power natures are truly exist, then it is, why is it not, why not you can claim that there is the son of the barren woman? So like this is non-dualistic kind of, the I consciousness in appearance of the external realities. Although there is no external reality, the I consciousness, which is inseparable, which is still appears to the mind, but is not ascertained. So then, why not you can say there is son of barren woman, it appears to the mind, but there is no way you can ascertain it. It's inexpressible truth. So this is as follow: if these entities, that is your dependent natures, which has no arising and is uncognized, can still exist, why would something not fit to be existence, such as the son of the barren woman, offend you? So when I say there is a son of the woman, son of the barren woman, so which it always appears to the mind, but is not yet ascertained. So therefore, you cannot say it does not exist, and it is the true which is, cannot be expressed, it cannot be conceived, but still the true. When I say that, does it offend you? And say, if that's offending you, and then why not? There is no proof of the other power nature truly exists, but still you insist, yes, it appears to the mind, but not yet ascertained.
How is it different, Geshe-la? What something appears to the mind and somebody, whether apprehended or not, ascertained it or not?
So the Minor school says, yes, the Chalakiti continues the, laying out the reasonings to disprove the reflexive awareness. So at the end, Minor school, there's no reason. There's no reason left for them to reclaim the reflexive awareness. And then Minor school says, yeah, it appears to the mind. I feel this true, But maybe I don't have any reason to prove it, but it feels like it's true. So then if I say there is kind of son of the barren woman, but I cannot express it, I cannot point where this has born, but it feels like it exists. So so does it offend to you or so? No. I feel like there's a rabbit horn, I feel like there's a rabbit horn, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know how sharp that is, how long that is, but I feel like it exists. If I keep insisting you, does it offend you? Because you have no any reason to hold on to the consciousness truly exists. Only one reason that you have, that's we have debunked it. So that the dependent nature does not, other power nature does not arise from itself or from something other has already been explained. Also, I have just shown how the reflexive awareness establishing such dependent natures does not exist as well. So if this entity that is your dependent nature or the other power natures, which has no intrinsic arising and uncognized by the valid cognitions, can still exist by virtue of its essence, then why would something not fit to be existing, such as the son of the barren woman, offend you? Why it makes you, you feel it's not right? Chitramathas, in other words, why do you not accept its existing? You should so. You should accept there is the rabbit horn, which is very sharp and 2 foot long. You should accept. So you, the Chitramathas, should go ahead and assert that there exists something called the son of the barren woman that transcend all conceptual elaborations, that is, has an affable, ineffable by its very natures, and that remains only within the sphere of the experience of the Arya's gnosis.
So it sounds like they're almost trying to explain the contradiction of. What it sounds like it would be the more like the two truths from the Prasangika perspective almost, but their explanations is trying to root the cause and effect as intrinsic.
Yeah, this is pretty much like there's a story in Sri Lanka, many years. The British, they came to Sri Lanka first, and then with the church people, and they, asked questions to the monks. The Buddhist monk says, you believe there's a mind mirror. So if you cannot prove mind mirror, and you have to accept, Jesus, and no one have any idea to prove that mind mirror. And one monk raised hand and says, I have seen that, mind mirror, because I climbed on the top of this Christmas tree. So I saw it right there, the mind mirror. so if there is no Christmas tree and there's no mind mirror, you can
Did they like that explanation? I feel like they didn't like that explanation.
yeah, because this says if there's no mind mirror, you have to give up the Buddhist, Buddhist Buddhist teaching. Then says, yes, I have seen the mind mirror. I climbed over the top of the Christmas tree, so I saw it. There's mind mirrors there. So this kind of one monk from Sri Lanka, who, and later on he wrote some books on the impermanence of, and then that, the Buddhist concept of impermanence and the link with the scientific, the wave and the particles he put together. So this is almost like same thing, if I said there is the rabbit horn, which is 2 foot long and very sharp, right? So if that is offending you, and then it says reflexive awareness, I have no reason to prove it, but I feel like this is true. And then I too say, I feel like there's a rabbit horn. And it runs very fast, and it has a very or you want to say, I swear there is, rabbit horn. So how the Chittamata standpoint falls short on both level of truth. So now this is as follow. Now, if dependent natures does not exist in the slightest manner, or I think it's better to say, if the other power natures does not exist in the slightest manner, what then can be the cause for the conventional realities? So because you remain attached to something substantial, real, so you demolish all the facts of the worldly convention. So other power natures is there is no other power natures do not exist intrinsically, even in the slightest manner. So what base you can claim or assert in the conventional, there is the conventional realities, because you remain attached to the something that's substantially real. So your thinking, asserting the consciousness that truly exists, means you have found something in your mind that is substantial and a kind of property of the consciousness, something that true existence of the consciousness. So because of that, your mind is, again and again attached to this kind of characteristic of the truly existing consciousness. So when you say, the consciousness is only truly exists, no external existing, and that is demolishing the all facts of the worldly conventions. So what is the worldly conventions? Sit down, sit, and then go, or go out, come in. So these are all prove external reality. There is external, you can go out, you cannot go and sit, So these are the conventional reality, which the word is saying, indicating, yes, there is external. There's some way you can go out. There's somewhere you can not go and sit. So if dependent natures does exist through its intrinsic natures, what is the state? What is stated in the line, which is the cause of the imputing things? So like imputing the consciousness truly exists, and so on may be okay. Now if dependent natures possessing the intrinsic reality does not exist in the slightest manner, what then can be the cause for the substantial real basis for the dualistic conventional reality? So nothing at all. These arguments demonstrate that because they assert the dependent nature to exist on the ultimate level, the Chittamata, fall short of the level of ultimate truth. So when you say the consciousness is truly exists, is ultimately existing, which means you have fall from the ultimate level. So because you do not understand what is the ultimate truth. So when you say consciousness is the ultimate truth. So when you say there is no external reality and you are fall from conventional reality. So it will turn out for the Chittamata that whatever cause of the worldly conventions, there may be, none exist by virtue of their essential natures. So I think another verse says, Allah's use, because you Chittamata lack of competence of the wisdom discriminating the final definite truth. You remain attached to the real existing of the mental state alone as a substantially reality, real, dependent natures. Yet without the so now this is the metaphor. Without the hardening, the clay pot of the dependent nature is the dependent natures in a kiln. So you have poured water like, inappropriate philosophical analysis into it.
He got a little mean.
So, first you haven't really proven the consciousness truly exists. Then this says the consciousness is the truly exist and the ultimate. So through that way you are talking about trying to understand, find the actual path of enlightenment. So your whole idea of enlightenment, your path is, it's like you're pouring the water in,
unhardened clay.
Yeah. Yeah. Without hardening the clay. Uncooked clay. So which means you have no, actual path for the enlightenment. So the Prasangika school said to the minority school, you don't have actual path for enlightenment. This through the inferiority of your intellect in inappropriate reasonings. You diminish or destroy all the fact of worldly convention that are established purely within the framework of the everyday transactions, such as the sit down and go there, do this, and so on. Similarly, you defy or undermine all such facts as the arising of the feeling on the basis for the perceiving the external forms and external object. Therefore, has a misfortune await you. Chitramata, you will not attain the higher or the excellent state of existence. So you cannot. This is quiet, So the argument that if external reality is rejected, the conventions such as go there and become untenable indicates how these conventions are related external reality. So this argument demonstrates how Chaitanya falls short on the level of conventional truth. So this may happen, in earlier so many pages, all were trying to convince the minority school, saying there's no reflexive awareness. And, as a result of how many times you have kind of laced the reasoning, and minority school finally said, I feel like this is true. I have no reason, but we feel like. Then, something to get angry. So your final is, I swear this must be true. So now the final is this, therefore it is logical to follow the Nagarjuna system alone. So those who remains outside the Master Nagarjuna's way, they have no means for attaining true peace. They have strayed from the truth of the conventional and suchness. So they just gone out, from the true truths. And because of this failure, they will not achieve the liberations. So now main point is, you are not going to achieve the liberations through your understanding of emptiness. Because your minority school, their point of view is fall from the true truth, conventional truth and ultimate truth. And how you fall from ultimate truths? Because you have no idea what is the ultimate truth is. So therefore you think the consciousness is truly exists. And you reject the external realities. So that contradicts with the conventional sit down and go there like this, and in looking at things like, I want to listen to this, I want this, I don't want to go there, I want to go there. So there's some kind of all, proving that there is the external reality. There's something outside of the consciousness. It's not like a dream. Right? So when you fall from the true truth, and that means you haven't really found the action path for the liberations. With this point of view, you cannot attain the liberations. So therefore, finally, and you have to follow. There's no another way that Nagarjuna's, other than Nagarjuna's systems. The conventional truth means, while the ultimate truth is its end. So conventional truth means, while the ultimate truth is its end. You understand that? So those who fail to know the distinction between the two will enter the wrong path through the false conceptualizations. So conventionals are the stairs to enter into the ultimate house. Ladders, you just climb up and then go into the house. That real house is ultimate truth. So to reach the ultimate truth, you have to go through the convention. So the conventional and ultimate truth is not too contradictory. They're not mutually exclusive. Yeah, any questions? I think that reminds me the Navigation's the 70 stanzas. Someone asked questions like, if there is no intrinsic arising, there is no substantial arising. And if there is no substantial arising, so there is no substantial reason, right? A reason. And how Buddha has shown the path to enlightenment. Because when there is no arising and there's no reason, there's no disintegrations. There's no disintegration of the cessation of the suffering. Suffering is not arise. Suffering won't disintegrate. Suffering is not going to cease to exist. And how Buddha has shown the path to enlightenment or liberations. And then this is, Kinji teaches, because of the teaching of the origination or the disintegrations. So this is not the actual path, to the liberations. The Buddha has shown how he's shown the path to enlightenment of the liberation is to introducing the emptiness through origination and disintegrations. How he introduced the emptiness through the origination and disintegrations, he says, yes, there is originations relatively, no ultimately originations, no ultimately disintegration of the cessation. So that is how he teaches the emptiness. The emptiness cannot be shown without, touching on conventional reality. So why the ordinary people fail to understand the liberation is they see the contradictory in arising in the disintegrations. The ordinary people sees arising means is happening, disintegration is end. So it's to contradict the meaning. So when sentient beings sees this thing, so they cannot understand the arising and the disintegration is relatively existing. They see it's apple and orange, black and white. So when there is arising, the meaning of the arising is like the arising of the sprout is nothing but disintegration of the barley seed, disintegration of the seed. So it is not contradictory with that. Right? The arising of the sprout is no different from disintegration of the seed. And the arising of the sprout is not identical with disintegration of the seed. Not identical, they are not different. And then because of this, the arising of the sprout is nothing but disintegrating the seed, means the arising of the sprout. So within there is no such sprout to be arising. If there is the sprout, and it is already arisen, so there is no essence in the future, right? There is no essence in the past. There is no essence in the present, because the present is, conceptually constructed based on the past and the future. So ordinary people see the contradictory arising of disintegration. Therefore, ordinary people could not find actual path to the liberations. And this philosophical school, like minority school and Sotandika school, because they think the consciousness is truly exists, so therefore they fail to understand what is the ultimate truth. And minority school reject the external reality, therefore minority school, fail to understand the conventional reality. So therefore, only one system can be shown to the liberation, is Nagarjuna. Yeah, any questions? So now, yeah, if you kind of read through these two stanzas, Chandakya, this root text. So there's one that says, therefore, since no reflexive awareness exists, what is it that cognize your dependent natures? Which means, what is that you find the consciousness is truly exists? So you're saying reflexive awareness is we have proven to be non-existing. Now, what is that you think the consciousness truly exists? And what base you are saying? Since the agent, object, and action cannot be identical, so they are separate, not identical, the claim that cognition apprehends itself is untenable. Now, usually, knower and known are two separate, distinct phenomena. So therefore, now you say eye consciousness perceived by eye consciousness itself is untenable. Like a blade, no matter how sharp it is, it cannot cut itself. The tip of the nail cannot touch itself. So no consciousness, perceived in itself. So you also accept there is no way that any perception like eye consciousness perceived by other consciousness. So only for you is eye consciousness. If that, if there is the, perceiving the eye consciousness, then the only things that left is eye consciousness itself. So, and then you don't have any, base to claim the consciousness truly exists. And then the second stanza says, now if the dependent natures does not exist in the slightest manner, so because there's no base for claiming consciousness truly exists, therefore consciousness not truly exists, what then can be caused for the conventional realities? So what is the base for the conventional realities? So like, for example, so what is the conventional reality that you understand? I see it, I'm hearing it, I'm tasting it. So there is no external reality. And the subjective experience, the consciousness is not experiencing, not perceiving itself. The tongue consciousness is not having a taste of the tongue consciousness. So the taste, the external reality, the external taste is you have rejected. Now only the tongue has to taste itself. The eye consciousness see itself. So you have already kind of fallen from the conventional reality. You have against the ordinary language and the ordinary concept. Because you remain attached to, the main thing is you are attached to the consciousness as something substantial reality there. The consciousness is not substantial, it's not substantial reality. So you demolish all the fact of the worldly conventions. So that's the main thing now. So then the minority schools have no evidence to prove the reflexive awareness is truly exist. As when you have no proof of the reflexive awareness, that means you have no proof of a consciousness that truly exists. And then at the end, minority school says, but it appears to the mind, it seems very true, but I have no reason to prove it. You're just stuck in there. And then I would say, I have ultimate truth of the rabbit horn, which is 2 foot long and very sharp. It runs very fast, 70 kilometers per hour. So it cannot be proved, but I feel like it's true. If this offends you, and then definitely your consciousness, thinking consciousness truly existing, is no base, is the baseless.
The reflexive awareness is believed by both Vaibhashikas or Chantika, Chittamatta.
Well, Vaibhashikas, I don't know, Sautrantika school, the minority school, they kind of, what call it, propound or, the existing of the reflexive awareness. I think they both have same reason because I remember object and subject. Object remember because I have perceived it in the prior time. So now when I remember the subject, that means I have already perceived that subject in the prior time. So the remembering is the kind of remember. Memory is their evidence to claim, yes, there's a possible reflexive awareness. And the Prasangika schools, yes, and one, there's the part of the true in that in minority school and Sautrantika school is because you have perceived something, therefore you remember. So now the perceiving, and there's a two-way, perceiving the actual object or perceiving the appearance of the consciousness. So the perceiving the appearance of the consciousness, even the wrong perceptions, has the potential to perceive what it appears to their mind. When you say there is the like in non-Buddhist school and even the ordinary people innately feel like there is independent self. There is a substantial self, person, right? So, because it appears to the mind, that is very vivid and very convincing to them. So that appearance is perceived. Therefore, constantly you remember yourself. So, even some kind of, when, when you see things that is not really real, but it appears to you so vividly, so you remember that things. So, for example, if you taste kind of, if you eat some kind of bread or sweet, and while you are eating it and your tongue conscious is not functioning well, there's no the taste that you have perceived. And then later on, you cannot remember what taste of that thing. So directly what appears to the consciousness appears. It perceived that. So therefore is a consciousness, you are conscious of something. Even the wrong consciousness is conscious of the appearing object. So, any questions?
I just want to double check. Or you had said not contradictory and not mutually exclusive, and was that in regards to both conventional truth and ultimate truth?
Yeah. So conventional truth, the lie and the truth. So lie and the truth is mutually depending. When there is no lie, there's no truth. There's no truth, there's no lie. So the conventional ultimate truth is, ultimate truth is the, when you prove the, conventional does not truly exist, that is the ultimate truth. The conventionals is a falsely exists or lie or illusions, not true. So not true of that, lie is the ultimate truth. So the ultimate is no different from the conventional truth. So that the conventional truth is the means, while the ultimate truth is its end. Tabjung, I think, just a little bit. Sometimes the language has something to do with this. So conventional truth is the means to reach the ultimate truth. The conventional truth is the means to actualize the ultimate truth. So those who fail to know the distinctions between the two and will enter the wrong path through the false conceptualizations. So if you don't understand, when you don't understand the conventional truth and the ultimate truth, but you will still find something is true. So that truth is your own truth. You made up truth, but you have to have some kind of truth in there. So regarding those who exposed to teacher who is expound definite, what is the fact, provisional or false? Have entered the system that has been, has a construct through someone's own conceptualization and fall to arrive at the Buddha's intentions. So now the whole school, Vivashika school, Sautrantika school, Minority school, and maybe autonomous school, and the Prasangika school, they all claim they understand the intention of the Buddha. So they all claim this is what Buddha has taught. So the Vivashika school 3 times substantially exist. This is what Buddha teaches. And then say how which part of the line that you can show it to me that Buddha says 3 times substantially exists. And then they says, oh, Buddha says, I know 3 times. When Buddha says, I know 3 times, he sees 3 times in one time. So he sees the 3 times in the present. So that means, during the present time, the past and the futures is exist simultaneously. But they don't have any proof the Buddha has in any line that says, oh, this is what Buddha says, 3 times substantially exists. Buddha never said that. But the Buddha says, I see the 3 times. So when the Buddha sees the 3 times, 3 times must be exist substantially. And when do you see? He sees today. So today there must be past and the future. Because Buddha sees today 3 times. The Sautrantika school, and then Sautrantika schools, this is what is the ultimate truth? What is ultimate truth? Anything that you can experience. So the consciousness you experience, that's ultimate truth. And color, sound, smell, that you can directly experience. These are all ultimate truth. What is not ultimate? So what is conventional? What is not true? What is unreal? Imagination is not real. So Sautrantika school. So the minor schools, what is the true? The consciousness true. What is not true? The external reality is not true. So they're all things. They are, they kind of have the idea of what is Buddha's intentions, what is the Buddha actual, what he was, maybe actual thought of the Buddha. So, even the ordinary people who, like non-Buddhist school, they think, the surrounding school, mindfulness, Vipassana school, so they have their own truth. The Atma is the only truth, and other than that, Atma and Paramatma. So self, the person yourself, and Bhagavan, and everything is lie. So he is. We are the truth. In the Bhagavad Gita, there is actual claim in the Krishna. He says, there's only one truth. That's me. The rest is lie. so which means. So he keeps changing, but he's coming in different form, But he says that I'm the only one that's true. The rest is lie. Maybe there's a different definition of the truth. Maybe he was saying, I'm the only one that is perfect and pure. The rest is imperfect and contaminated. So they remain outside the way the initiated by the noble master Nagarjuna. So they're all, very, they're far from Nagarjuna's idea. For those who thus remain outside, they have no principle means for the attaining the true peace of Nirvana. Why? Because those who remain outside in such manner have, definitely steered, right? Straight from the truths of the conventional and the suchness, ultimate truth. That is the ultimate truth. Once they fall short on the true truth, they will not achieve the liberations because of this failure, so long as this condition is not relinquished. So, non-Buddhist school, there's a very, very fascinating ideas, the methods, and different way of the concentrations. But when it comes to the liberations, so the one thing, to enter into the Bhagavan. Bhagavan is there, and then you are, he's kind enough to accept you. So when you accept, you just become the energy, and then become inseparable with Bhagavan. And that's the moksha, liberations. So that you have no decision to make, to attain the liberations. Bhagavan makes decisions. So Bhagavan make decisions means, if someone who has many lives practice the concentrations, follows the right path, he may take much longer time. If there's the Batman who kind of he was fortunate enough to, being countered with Bhagavan. And Bhagavan, he decide, now this is your time. You just come to me. So then this person, another person who has spent so many lives in the practicing, say, how it is possible? It's not fair. So the decision is made by the dual liberation decision made by the Bhagavan. So how's that? Naga Buddha says, your liberation is not held by someone, not owned by someone. So when you perfectly understand your consciousness, your mind thoroughly, and you have attained the liberations, it's your hand. It's up to you, when to liberate, when to attain the liberation, enlightened. Enlightened cannot be given to you by other, because they don't have, the Bhagavan don't hold your liberation. If the Bhagavan is the liberation, is all about entry into the Bhagavan. And when did Bhagavan enter into Bhagavans? So in what means he was able to attain the liberations? So there is no any evidence or any means to prove Bhagavan has enlightened. So now is the very foundation of this idea is based on ascension. Any questions? No questions? So main points now, the minority school thinks if the consciousness does not truly exist, so there's a something, during, how's that? In Tibetan we term use shi nigam. From the foundation, from the beginning, there must be some true nature or true substance that can go to the enlightenment of the liberations. This body is not going to enlighten the moisture, the heat, and the air. There is nothing. So the only thing that you have right now that can be the seed for the liberation, that can go to the enlightenment, is the consciousness. So therefore, the consciousness truly exists. And another reason is consciousness is the only one that creates the negative karma or the positive karma, and consciousness is the only one who experiences the consequences of the positive karma and negative karma. The law and cause and effect depending on consciousness. So therefore consciousness is, if not true, in the law and cause and effect, is become shaky, it's not stable. And enlightened is not really reasonable. So therefore the consciousness has to be truly exist, as my name is called. If nothing truly exists, so which means it is equal to the everything is lie and everything is not true, means everything is just not exist in the actual way. They just your conception of projecting things existing, which means existing is in the face of the misconceptions. Mistakenly, you see things, you perceive things, and in the actual, in the ultimate way, there is no such thing exists. So this is minority school things. If nothing truly exists, so no, the ultimate goal to achieve. So there is no consequence of negative and positive karma. So therefore, the consciousness has to be, must truly exist. Now the problem comes in how do you really prove the consciousness truly exists? So, and the minority school, before I prove the consciousness not truly exists, I would say, like color, sound, smell, taste, how these are not truly exist. These are, the color, sound, smell, taste, in the hell realms, the animal realms, God realms, the human realms, all of them is, just the mind. So its mind is experiencing its own reflections. It's seeing its own image. So if there is, and physically, substantially, there's the hell realm, and then there is, the burning in the hell realms. Who started the fire in the hell realms? What kind of wood they use, or it is the gas, or or what? Who started the fires? And then which direction the hell realm is, and how deep they are underneath the ground. And if there's a heaven in the, and where it is, how high it is. It is above the sun and moon, or in between there, and or just above the cloud. So, minority school, if you cannot prove that, so only thing you can understand the hell realm exists is the mind experience its own negative imprints. So the color is nothing but mental imprints. Sound, smell, taste, textures, even the element, the heat, the moistures, the air, the space, all are only, and finally it's just proven by experience of the consciousness. Consciousness experience, there's some heat in there, and that the heat exists. Consciousness experience, there's some kind of liquidity that flows in your body. Consciousness experience, there's some air comes in and out. It's all, essentially it is experience of the consciousness. The elements are experience of the consciousness. Seeing, the hearing is just consciousness. And the hell realm, the heaven, all are experience of the consciousness, nothing but experience. So nothing externally exists, only the consciousness. So then they say, the finally is the consciousness. Now, if I try to, through the logic, if I try to consciousness is directly proving this truly exists, then we say, because of the reflexive awareness. When you see things, you remember this, object that you see, and also you remember the experience, subjective experience. There must be something, some consciousness, some perceptions. With each perceptions that is seeing, experiencing only the subjective experience, not the object. So that is called reflexive awareness. That reflexive awareness perceived, like reflexive awareness of eye consciousness, perceived eye consciousness, non-dualistically. So which means the reflexive awareness, there's no even slightest mistake in that reflexive awareness. it is experiencing as it is. So because of the reflexive awareness is non-dualistically perceiving the consciousness, and it is totally unmistaken. So when whatever it appears reflexive, that must be truly exist. And then we said, what is the evidence for the reflexive, awareness to be existing? And then is the recollections. So recollections that you remember the subject, the object, and subjective experience. And then the reality, when there's no perception that perceiving that object, there's no possible for remembering it. When you remember, you have already perceived that. So therefore, you remember object and subject at the same time. So that means at the time of experiencing the object, there is another experiencer who is experiencing the experience. And then finally, I swear that's true. So under the God. So they have pretty much, minor school sound is very, very reasonable at the time. Now the Chalakirti says, only just because of the recollection, they remember the subjective experience, that is not really the valid reason to prove there is a reflexive awareness. So then the question is the subjective experience subjective, it perceived by itself, or it perceived by another consciousness, different consciousness? And if you say the eye consciousness will sees the color, and that eye consciousness perceived by another, the different consciousness, which consciousness? Air consciousness, nose consciousness, or the mental consciousness? So then, if different consciousness has to perceive the air consciousness, the eye consciousness, and then who perceive the different consciousness has perceived the eye consciousness, and then from there you can remember, right? And that the third consciousness perceiving this consciousness perceiving the first consciousness, and who perceived that another, and then rigorously, infinite rigorous. If the eye consciousness is perceived, the eye consciousness by itself, then again, as logically, it's not really possible. So there's the sword, no matter how sharp it is, it cannot cut itself. The tip of the nail cannot touch itself. So even when we say I see it, then there is dualistic. There's the object to see, there's a subject who is seeing it. Subject and objects distinct. So how can you say eye conscious seeing itself? Is eye conscious perceived eye consciousness through the eye sense power? So when there comes this kind of reasoning, when we kind of tease it, and then probably they have not much reason. Before it sounds very, unique in the best powerful reasonings, everything is consciousness, experience. And then the Shantideva says, and ordinarily when we say I remember, we don't really, when we say I remember, now I remember, that does not mean you have perceived earlier. Something that reminds you something, that reminds you something else. That's also in the mundanely we say this is the memory. and the psychology of the concept. Neuroscientists, so they think the consciousness is, if there is a consciousness, it has to be part of the brain, or it is the brain, or it is in the brain, or it is attached to the brain. So then where the electricity is, when you turn on all the lights, where the electricity is it in the wire, inside the wire, or is it's riding over the wires, or it is just attached to it? Because when there's the electricity, it has to, it has to be activated through the wire. So then the question is, if electricity is coming through the wire, is it inside the wire or it's on the wire? When you hear the sound, it is riding on the air or it is inside the air. When some scientists, before they say it's sound rides the ether, which is the air, and then later on says there is no ether. So when the sound is happening, you don't see it is dwelling within the air. So there says there is no ether. And who thought the sound is without the air is not possible. And then he says the air is the ether of the sound. So how can you debunk that? When the sound is happening, there is no sound, different from the air. So first we think without air there's no sound. Therefore, first air has to exist. So therefore, air is the ether. So there's no debunk, there's no Yeah. Chanju semjo rinpoche, maje bana, jejuji, jeba nyamba, meba, kone kondo pewaji. Tonyi tawa rinpoche, maje bana, jejuji, jeba nyamba, meba, kone kondo pewaji. Pama simjen tamjen, dedan denjuji, yendro tamjen, tato pongo. Chanju semba kama suji, tadabuji, momom jubjiruji. Kare rabe gobeji, panda dewa ma nunjunga. Jere zonga, tenzin jato yi, shabe side bado denjuji.
May the precious body mind not yet on horizon grow. May the bone of no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet on horizon grow. May the bone of no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all Father and Mother sentient beings have all the happiness, and may all lower realms be emptied forever. Wherever there are bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. O powerful Trinity Intrinsic Council, remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you.